'Tis the season of love, and what better way to celebrate than discussing the wardrobe behind every cinephile's fave love story, Secretary. I'm your host, Krys,
And Valerie.
and welcome to our little podcast, Hot Couture, the show where we break down the wardrobes of your fave horror films and TV shows and adjacent.
Now, Chris, Valentine's Day may be over, but not for these two. They get to play all year round. Today, we'll be covering the genius symbolism behind the costuming for Lee, played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, and Edward Grey, played by James Spader. But most importantly, how their romantic, controversial dynamic manifests from the inside out, starting with, of course, their clothing. We'll also be answering the long awaited question: is love dead? Or is this mindset a byproduct of the current generation terrified of social taboo?
I wanted to begin this by asking you about your experience watching this, since I think this is your first, full watch through, right? Like, you watched the entire thing in one go.
Yeah, like over the years, I'd seen like clips here and there of the movie, but never really sat down to watch it completely. So when you were like, hey, let's cover Secretary, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. And this gives me like an excuse to really sit down and watch all of it. So yeah, it was a nice surprise. I really don't hate me. Really only knew James Spader from I think it's called The Blacklist, a TV show from oh my gosh, I don't know how long it's been since it came out, but that's what I knew him from. So watching this film, I was really taken aback by his character. I think I was texting you. I was like, yeah, I'm like 10, 15 minutes in and I'm really uncomfortable. But that just goes to show, his talent, his range. But I really liked it. So yeah, I was really surprised by it too.
What were you surprised by when we were watching the movie?
Yeah, I know we're gonna talk about it later in the episode, but really how there really weren't any sex scenes. Apart from obviously just like their, power play, if you will. I was expecting more, so I was genuinely surprised by the lack of the physical intimacy between them in that sense. Um, so yeah,
What would you give it out of 5 stars?
I'd say 4.
Not bad. I'd give it
Mhm.
5. It used to be in my top 4. And you already know how it goes. Like, I have the VHS, I have the DVD in case they pull it off streaming. I have everything equipped just in case. But yeah, that's what I love too about the movie. Like, how there's no explicit sex scenes till like the very end. And then, like,
Mhm.
the one minuscule scene we kind of see that's like kind of sexual with Lee's ex boyfriend now. It's
Yeah,
like barely, it's like in the dark. Like, nothing's really happening.
yeah,
So I like that. I like how they challenge that kind of like stigma of like, oh, like in order to be erotic, you have to show skin, when that's like not true at all. So yeah, I'm glad you liked it though. I'm glad it didn't traumatize you. I was scared. I was like, oh, is this gonna be too much for her? Because
no,
it's like my
no.
type
I
of thing.
mean, I think I've seen worse over the years. So no, I was just really just surprised, and I think yeah, we were talking about our research for the film. We are gonna do like a little deep dive into the history of BDSM and talk about the misconceptions that I think the film really touched on. So I was really excited about that, and yeah, let's get on to their wardrobe.
Oh wait, for those who don't know, and you guys are like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what are we listening to? To give you the letterbox synopsis, this is on the app, by the way, if you have letterbox. It says, assume the position. A young woman, recently released from a mental hospital, gets a job as a secretary to a demanding lawyer, where their employer-employee relationship turns into a sexual, sadomasochistic one. So, very fun. We're gonna have lots of fun with this one. So with Lee, the girl of the hour, we kind of came to a mutual consensus that like there's no like info about the costuming at all for this film. Like everything's basically up for interpretation. So with Lee, I feel like most of it leans more towards color analysis more than like the actual pieces. And James, ditto, the same, you know? But I wanted to ask you if you noticed anything about Lee's wardrobe when you were watching.
Oh yeah, I think as she sort of becomes more comfortable with him and, they have that first sort of encounter, she kind of starts, her style starts to evolve. She's a little bit more sexy, a little bit more provocative at work than when we first meet her, coming out of the mental hospital. Um, she's just like in this like really like raggedy gown or clothing, and like even at the wedding, she's, in this dress that's just not really any doing anything for her figure. Um, so yeah, she really kind of comes into her own as the film evolves.
Yeah. I feel like with her and like her mom kind of, you kind of see even her sister, not to be mean, but it's like you could kind of see they're like emotionally stunted a little bit, whether it be through trauma with the dad being an alcoholic or,
Mhm.
domestic violence, but with them, I feel like they have that same pattern of clothing. They have like an emotional support color, which is very interesting. Like, I never noticed that while watching before, but like ever since I've been like locked in, I kind of noticed the mom has like a dependency on the color pink, and so does the
Mhm.
sister. And I don't know if that like plays into like, oh, girlhood, womanhood, like, being super feminine as like a trauma response or something, or whether
Mhm.
it just be like, I don't know, just like something that they picked up over the years. But I feel like with Lee, it's the complete opposite with Purple. Her coping mechanism with Purple is a little different. It's more about independence and finding stability. That's like the one thing she misses. Even when she's like leaving the mental hospital, you mentioned to me before, like she's kind of sad to leave. And that's like kind of
Yeah.
eerie that like she's like, I want to go back. Like you don't hear people say that often, but
Yeah.
she loves that structure. And that's something that, James gives her.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've been kind of just like even like recent films that we've talked about, the color analysis, um, where characters are really attached to a certain color. I don't know if Frankenstein just like, opened our minds up to that, or if we've just been missing that for the past like years that we've been watching films and like TV shows, but that's really interesting.
Yeah, I love the color grading of this movie so much. It's like sort of reminiscent of like Heather's, Jawbreaker. It's very
Mhm.
satirical, kind of John Waters ish. It's like, oh, like it's supposed to be funny, but like also like not really. Like it's
Yeah.
supposed to be kind of serious. It reminds me of this movie that's gonna come out this year called I Love Boosters. Same thing. Like it's
Mhm.
so over, like extravagant, so much colors, and I really love how they play that into the storytelling, and we're gonna get into like why that's really important for this movie specifically for both characters. But yeah, it's just something that like I really appreciate in like the era of like millennial gray, color grading nowadays. Like everything's
Mhm.
so washed out. It's so refreshing to see something like this, once in a while.
So what else did you find out about Lee?
I feel like with Lee, she very much is like the type of person that finds most of her autonomy or her independence through playing a role. Like
Mhm.
immediately, like as soon as he's like, "Oh, you're my secretary," she locked in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she was like, "Oh, I have to dress the role now." Like ever since like he kind of
Mhm.
like berated her about that too. Like, "Oh, if you're gonna like mess with your hair, you're gonna wear a hairnet. You also look, you look bad." And she's like, "Oh my god, like I
Yeah.
have to like fix my stuff. Like like I have to impress my mans. Like I have to get it together." And that's exactly what she does. I feel like the one outfit everybody sees or like is kind of like known in the community a little bit more is the bar outfit with the spreader
Mhm.
bar, and she's like handcuffed to it. I really love that outfit for a few reasons, but the main one being it's like, oh, she is solidifying her role as the femme fatale of the office. Like she is
Mhm.
the siren. And if you don't know, a femme fatale is something the old heads would like to describe, very seductive, very charming, but kind of manipulative women. And it used to be very misogynistic back then. But now it's
Mhm.
not so much because it's more about, women being seen as equal to men and being seen as being capable of, having these really rash decisions and being kind of like not perfect, being evil, if you will. Like nowadays, like femme fatales we would associate the most with would be like Tashi Duncan from Challengers, or Jennifer from Jennifer's Body, or maybe like Zoe Kravitz Catwoman. They're very alluring, but they're also very smart, and they use that against all the men. But yeah, with this outfit specifically, it's very like rash, very harsh. It's very like black white. And then we kind of see Lee's mentality be the same way. She's like, "Oh, this is right, this is wrong." Especially like with the way James corrects her with the pen. Like it's a direct opposite of the pen's red shade. And with like I don't want to say like it's fetish wear, but it kind of is fetish wear in a way. Like she's getting into this role. Um, but yeah, like that outfit basically like challenges the social taboo of like, oh, you have to show skin to be provocative or be desirable. But with Lee, it's the complete again opposite, where she's like, no, I don't have to be that way. Like I can just be myself and just really play into this fantasy, this emotional fulfillment that he needs, that I need. And we kind of see that evolve through this outfit and through the way that she owns it. She doesn't let the outfit wear her, she wears the outfit. And then, psychologically speaking, black and white are usually paired together to create a very harmonious balance that's visually striking and emotionally grounding. So, if you ever look at something and it's like black and white, or like a painting or something, and you're like, oh, this is kind of calming, it's kind of the point. Same thing applies to this outfit.
Yeah, like what an opening scene with her just like going around the office with this bar, being like handcuffed to this bar. When I saw that, I was like, oh my, okay, we're starting here. Got it.
Oh, we're really doing this. Okay.
Yeah.
When she's making the coffee, it cracks me up. Like she's
Yeah.
really like not backing down. I love that for her
She's like set. She's like, I'm locking in.
because she has to. That's the thing. It's like with, dom and submissives, people think, oh, like it's not their choice. It is her choice. She's like, I need to do a good job. I need him to reassure me. And that's what she loves so much about James, that he's very like rewarding when it comes to his reassurance. So that's
Mhm.
why she like goes over the top and she plays into this role that is kind of like, yeah, social taboo, not the healthiest, not the greatest, but it is consensual and it's very fun for her. And we kind of see her play around with that idea and then kind of like make that the sole like foundation for her independence and how she changes as a person, especially around her family, who are very much against all of this, as we kind of see as the movie progresses.
Can we talk about that raincoat outfit?
Oh my god, yes. So this one is actually my favorite from the movie because she looks just like an orchid. And you know who else owns
Mhm.
orchids? James. That is like his thing, which again, if your mom or if your auntie, you know, grows plants, you already know orchids are like one of the hardest to like actually like nourish and to keep
Yeah.
alive. Like I would hate when my mom would get an orchid and it would die like 2 days afterwards, but he makes it look so easy, like how to like take care of it, be so tender. And that's kind of the point. Like he's so like nurturing and he's like so patient, and he extends that patience to Lee. She's wearing this raincoat, and then a few minutes later he's watering his orchids. So it's like she's being a reflection of his garden essentially. The color lavender is really prevalent in Lee's wardrobe, like I mentioned before. Like that's just her emotional support color. And psychologically speaking, lavender is kind of associated with, being youthful. It's also the color that is associated with Christianity and Easter. It just kind of like represents part of the psyche that is untouched by the weary troubles of years, retains lots of vigor and vitality, which again plays into that like sexual relationship that they have, where they keep this like freshness within their dynamic. I just really love that outfit just because it mirrors like him being so nurturing to his plants. And we kind of see him take a picture of her later on, and he literally puts the picture in his garden. Like he's planting her essentially and like nourishing her. And she's just decked out in lavender head to toe. She looks like kind of like what's her face? Daphne from Scooby Doo, like the
Yeah.
dorky version, like that, And we kind of see her exit this storm outside in the rain into another storm in the office with everything looking, thrown around and everything. And we see one of his secretaries leave in tears. So we could kind of assume, like, oh, he has like a really nasty habit or like something's wrong. You know what I mean? But instead of like backing away, she goes straight into the eye of the hurricane and she talks to him when nobody else is around, which he's even like surprised by. He's like, why is she here? Like,
True.
why isn't she scared? But she's just like, again, it's kind of like her being naive, but also not really. It's just her like being curious. And that's the one thing everybody kind of lacks around her, like being curious and being playful. So we get to see this like side of her when she's wearing this raincoat outfit.
I thought that was interesting seeing her clothing versus like her as a person, like her maturity, just how that clashes with itself. Because yeah, like you see how she dresses and you think, oh, she's, you know,
Like
like her
childish.
maturity is somehow yeah, like somehow hindered. And then it's like, no, she's actually like she holds her own.
Yeah,
So yeah,
she's very smart. Like
yeah,
even he's like kind of like shocked by it. Like, oh, like she's kind of like with it, you know? Like she knows what's up with like the violet and everything in her wardrobe, even like the eyeshadow where it looks like that meme of that girl. You know what I'm talking about? Like the little
I
girl with
think
like
so.
the that's like what she looks like with the eyeshadow, but
No, when she picked that up, I was like, girl, no, put it down. Put it down.
pink eye galore. Thank God she still has her eyes. But
Yeah.
that's what she looks like, but it's not like in a bad way either. It's just her letting her inner child out to play because we could kind of see her home dynamics. She's not allowed to do that, you know, like she's kind of
Yeah.
been like in this like helicopter parent-esque sphere, you know, her
Mhm.
mom like always watching her even at work. She's like, I have
Yeah.
5 hours here, why are you outside? And the mom's just like worried about her, but
Yeah.
she doesn't let her grow. James lets her grow and like stand on her own, whether it be through retaliation or through discipline. You know, he lets her be her own person, and we see
Mhm.
that, you know, evolve through her fashion too.
Yeah, when he told her like, I want you to leave early and I just want you to walk home. Like I don't even think at that point he knows that like her mom is waiting outside. Um, but she's like, "You know what? Yeah, I'm going to walk home alone. I'm going to take this time. I'm an adult. I can do things on my own."
And
So
that's the
just
first step. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
exactly. Like another validation on his part of like seeing her as a person versus like her family who see her as, someone who may have hurt themselves.
They treat her like a burden.
Mhm.
And I feel like people who have like gone through mental health crisis or, you know, different conditions, they feel that way, you know, where it's like they constantly feel like, oh, they're not experiencing me as a person, they're experiencing me as like a burden. They infantilize people with like specific conditions, especially like self-harm like Lee does, and we see
Mhm.
her, you know, kind of get sick of it. She's like, you know what, I'm a grown lady. Like I could do this, this, and this. And even like after her first day, I love that shot of her in the bath and we see her pick up this snow globe and it's like ridiculously glittery and like
Mhm.
pink. And like the mermaid inside kind of looks like her mom with like the bottle blonde hair. And she chucks it in the bin. And it's kind of like her literally breaking the cycle. She's breaking that glass, which at least in my household, that's kind of like, you know, if you break glass, like, oh, that means you got rid of like bad juju or like the evil
Mhm.
eye. You know what I mean? And it's kind of
Yeah.
funny too that he said, like, oh, I want you to go get some fresh air. Plants need fresh air. And we kind of see like different elements scattered throughout the film that are needed to nourish a plant. And it kind of goes in hand with like the saying of like, oh, like all relationships are kind of like plants. Like relationships are like plants in the way that like you have to nourish them, you have to like
Mhm.
provide sunlight, you gotta like give them fresh air, you gotta like, you know, make sure the dirt is not rotted. And with him, like he really does make sure like she's okay, but also like he pushes her to be a version of herself that she wants to be taken seriously, be more mature too.
Anything else we wanna touch on with Lee?
This is kind of macabre, but like
Oh, great.
her self-harm box is purple, and
Oh,
like
yeah.
all of like the contents inside the box, which I'm not gonna say, is also kind of like purple and pink. And I always thought like that's kind of weird. Like it's so it's so unsettling like to see something so childish like wrapped in like something that's so harmful and dangerous. But I feel like that's kind of like how Lee's kind of seen in the world. Like, oh, she's a child, quote unquote, you know, whether it be through her trauma, she's stunted. which is not the case, obviously. But that's kind of like how her family sees her. So I think that's why she trusts him so much early on. She's like, oh, this is the type of guy that like gets that like I'm not like a bomb ready to
Mhm.
explode. Like I have potential. I am a person and I deserve to be seen equally.
Yeah, I really found that scene interesting too, especially when he very like firmly tells her like you're never gonna do this again,
Hmm.
and you can see her like process that and be like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that again. Um, and it's just again, I know we're gonna talk about it a bit later, but just um addressing like the misconceptions with these type of relationships, where like he's really gentle with her despite some of the things he tells her. But yeah, just that like scene where he's like, "You're never gonna do that again," and she's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna do that again." I think was really really telling about their dynamic and just that dynamic, that type of relationship in general.
You know what I just realized? Like, usually with films involving like mental health crisis, right? Usually it's the woman that's seen as like the manic pixie dream girl, as like the saint saving
Hmm.
the dude. It's kind of the opposite here, where James is the guy that's being like so tender with her. There's a scene like in the beginning, like when they're talking on the couch, and in the background he has like all his orchids, and the
Hmm.
way that he has it set up, it's like rings. So
Yeah.
when he's talking to her and he's like, "Oh, you're closed up tight. You don't let yourself go." When he says that, like the orchids in the back looks like a halo. But I thought that
Hmm.
was such a cool frame. Like it looks like something from a painting, and it's not something you would expect to have a man there. So I really do enjoy that. I really like it.
And I know we talked about this sort of towards the end of the film where, she's sitting in the chair in the office, kind of showing him like, "Hey, I'm really like committed to this." um oh, I forgot the actress's name, but I know we were like, "Oh, she was in Heated Rivalry." Um where she brings like these feminist books. And so I always found it like, interesting that like even like in this sort of women's like sexual experience, like it's still not seen as like being like feminist.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I've with this, with Lee, she sort of found freedom in submission. So I've always found that like idea interesting within this type of relationship. Like even like a film like 50 Shades of Grey, which um she's still, finding her sexual freedom in that dynamic. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. That scene at the end was really funny to me. Just like her presenting her these like feminist books where it's like, I don't know, isn't it kind of anti-feminist of you to be judging how I find pleasure?
That's the thing. It's like, oh, it's not feminist to like, you know, be submissive, right? But then they're saying, oh, it's a choice. You can get out of this. It's her choice to also stay.
Yeah.
So why are you like she's following your direction. She's staying. That's her choice. I think it also kind of like relates to like the argument of if you're judging a pick me girl, are you like also anti feminist? Like that type of situation. You know what I mean? Where it's like, are you really holding them accountable or are you just judging them? You
Mm,
know, same type of situation here. They're preaching about like, oh, you need to practice your bodily autonomy. How could you let a man be doing this, this, and this? That's the thing. She's letting him do this. She
yeah.
has control over this situation. That's kind of the point that like she's the reason why he's able to do this because she can walk away. And she has walked away before. So
I also found it interesting in that scene where it was the dad validating her relationship, like saying you have bodily like autonomy, so like whereas like all the other people in her life, even like the women are judging her for, having that autonomy.
probably because like the dad is so used to people judging him for the alcoholism. That's probably why like he kind of relates to that. Obviously they're not the same thing. They're very, very different. But with her, I feel like she gets stigma because she's a lady. For
Mhm.
him, he gets the stigma because he is a terrible father. They're kind of like not fulfilling their expectant roles. So
Mhm.
I think that's why he was like so, you know, soft when it came to that conversation with her. Like he really understood what she was feeling in that moment.
I was watching like that YouTube clip and somebody was like, "This is not where I thought the title was gonna go." Because that clip on YouTube is like her saying like "Thanks, Daddy." That's like the title of the clip. And so somebody in the comments was like, "That is not where I thought this was going."
Also, I found it so interesting how they showed like James' ex. I think it's his ex, not his wife,
Yeah.
but like a girlfriend.
Mhm.
She's like the complete opposite of Lee. I found
Yeah.
that so interesting.
Mhm.
Like usually with men like that, again, not to be stereotypical, but with men who are, famous, rich, they got a good career going, they go for the stereotypical, tall, blonde, blue eyed model. And she's that exact type, even down to like the box dress, which
Yeah.
I loathe so much. And then with the pearls looking very much like, old money,
Prim
what
and
the kids,
proper.
yeah, and like, you know what I mean? Like she's
Mhm.
what the kids are trying to aspire to nowadays when it comes to like faking money. But with Lee, she's wearing, purple, this glittery eyeshadow. She's kind of just like going to the thrift, or it appears to be going to the thrift, just buying stuff that she wants to wear. After she basically berates her and says, "Oh, you're submissive," after she wouldn't get James, a switch kind of flips. You could see her just be like, "Oh, actually, no, I'm not." And then she tells her off. And then the scene afterwards, we see her in the laundromat with her ex boyfriend. She's
Mhm.
wearing a pearl necklace, but hers has like little like beads that are like purple and like lavender and glittery. Such like a little niche detail, but so endearing. Where it's like, oh, she's finding a way to like incorporate dominance into her everyday life, but
Mhm.
also a piece of her, that like
Yeah.
softness and that curiosity. So I really like that detail. It's so cute.
Yeah, I think that's also kinda like her like saying this might just be like reiterating what you said, but like saying that no matter how you judge this, this isn't me losing myself in this type of relationship. So, yeah, that's interesting. All right, are we ready to move on to Mr. Gray?
Let's do it.
I just thought I remembered like texting you, or I think we were talking last time, like, oh my gosh, this movie is literally just 50 Shades of Grey, but like more mature.
More tasteful, if you will. But I
Yeah,
didn't say
more
that.
tasteful. Yeah. Even down to the Mr. Gray. But yeah, like again, there's not much about the costume design for this character either. I did find like a few interviews with like James Spader talking about the character. I don't know if you found like Maggie Gyllenhaal commenting on this film. But yeah, he was just, talking about portraying somebody that's very deeply conflicted, which you can very much tell that this character is very conflicted. There was one instance where he was talking about what drew him to this character was exploring the psychology, especially one so alien to his own. Like, obviously, he's not like Mr. Gray, and if he were, that's his business. Again, trying to understand the reality behind the character's behavior. And so, yeah, he was talking about how at times it was difficult filming these intimate scenes, which it's a different level of intimacy. Again, there's not really much like explicit sex scenes, but even then, there's still like intimacy within the power play that they engage in the movie. Um, so yeah, that was really interesting, and especially him really honing in on the psychological aspect of this character. So we have him dressing the role, he's the lawyer. Um, and what do we normally associate lawyers with? A suit and tie. And I know we talked about suits and tuxedos being like the heteronormative masculinity type of clothing. So, he's very much presenting himself as this gentlemanly, put together, organized person. And obviously, like the suit and tie are the traits that we normally associate with that are politeness, masculinity, even some form of restraint as well. But mostly him portraying like his authority, right? Like he's the dominant, he's the one in control. He's taken on that role within this relationship. So, again, he's just someone that provides Lee with the structure that she can't get anywhere else. That again, she was not wanting to leave the mental hospital because she was organized, whereas like at home it's so chaotic, you have the parents that are always fighting, the sister who doesn't really care about her. So yeah, it was very funny watching her like not wanting to leave at the beginning. But like moving on to his color analysis, he's pretty much, in those kind of like intriguing, mysterious, kind of boring colors. Like we see him in a lot of grays, blacks, reds, browns. I don't know if there was like a navy in there. I can't recall if there was like a navy suit or not. Those are mysterious colors, right? We sometimes associate that color palette with like almost like a seductive nature. There's something alluring about them that draws, the intended audience in. But again, it just goes back to that groundedness that this character has. Like he thrives on structure, on being grounded. And that's essentially what draws Lee to him. Did you add this note about the orchids?
Yeah. I have like a whole section about orchids because I thought it was very interesting, and I could have sworn there was like a mythological. What am I saying? I could have sworn.
Mythological.
Yeah, like a tale about orchids, but apparently it's pseudo myth, so it was
Mm.
made after the time. But if you guys are interested about what the story actually is, it's kind of dark, which goes along very nicely with our theme for this podcast. So basically, orchids were described to come from a, a son of a Greek god. So, according to Wikipedia, Orcus was the son of a nymph and a satyr. I think that's how you pronounce it. Satyr.
Seder.
Sometimes satyr. Okay. In
Mhm.
some iterations, he's said to be the son of Priapus. So one day during a festival in honor of the god of wine, Dionysus, Orcus is said to assault or at least attempt to assault one of the priestesses. So obviously, the god had to kill him. And his father mourned his son's death, Orcus, and asked the gods to bring him back. But they refused and instead created the orchid flower out of his corpse. And in another iteration of the story, basically he was torn apart by wild animals, or the priestesses themselves tore him to shreds, which good for them. And by intervention of the gods, the orchid grew from his nether regions, if you will. And that's where it comes from. And that's why it looks very, very vulgar. Okay? But again, this is just a pseudo myth. Some people take it as an actual myth, but it's not. It was invented by a floral or a French garden writer, Louis Liger, in 1704. So I just wanted to incorporate that just because like people associate that flower being like so, sexual, so provocative, but it's like yes, but no. Like it just depends on your interpretation of it. And it kind of goes with James, like again him being so like grounded and nurturing. Like he has a stereotypical like, suave suit kind of like game going on, but like as we kind of see him grow, he's like not serious at all. He's actually kind of
Mhm.
awkward. He's very like, you know, shy, as he told Lee, I am shy. She's like, how can you be shy? Like you're a lawyer. And he's like, I am shy, like just because you're given a title of something doesn't mean that you're not another thing. That's kind of like what he was trying to tell her.
Mhm.
And like even in like the red fantasy, which is the cringiest part of the movie, but it is kind of important. They're both wearing red, which is like
Mhm.
not in their color palettes at all. But then like in the background, I kind of see this really big orchid, this comical orchid. They have this like lust going on, this desire, but it's not expressed. And that's what the red kind of stands for. It stands for repressed sexuality, which is kind of ironic because we associate red with like, oh, love, with romance, Valentine's Day, and like stuff like that. But here they kind of like turn it around where it's like, no, it stands for, repressed feelings and desire.
Mhm.
And even like in like the fantasy, he's like standing in front of these red curtains, like he's about to put on a show. Low key, kind of like Twin Peaks vibes ish, kind of eerie. But then you see behind the
Mhm.
curtain, it's this really big orchid with Lee standing on top of it. It goes to show, like, yeah, like their feelings are mutual, but it cannot be expressed outside of the dream world or through James working out because we kind of see him wear like a long sleeve red shirt while working out. And I guess that's his way of like letting out some steam when he
Mhm.
thinks of Lee. So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And I know that
Mhm.
scene was so awkward too, but that's just kind of like how he is. Like, that's his coping mechanism, like structure, working out, trying to like let go of that pent up energy, which Lee seems to like not have pent up at all. Like, she's just like there. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They are very compatible in that way.
No, yeah, when that first scene of him, like, doing those sit-ups, I was like, "What are you doing, dude?" And then it's like, "Oh, no." It's just like he was so, like,
He was feeling it.
not expecting the feelings for her, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta do something."
And then we
That
see
was
him do
funny.
pull ups too, like later on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who the hell has a pull up bar in his office? This guy does,
Well, I
apparently.
mean, he's got other things there too, so
Oh, that's what I was gonna mention since we are talking about red. His office is literally a red room.
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone talk about that either. Like, it kind of matches the tie he always wears, that red tie. Like, it's his playground, he owns it, but he doesn't play in it. And that's kind of like what contributes to this like pent up frustration he has. And then like as he gets to know Lee, he kind of like switches ties out with like the
Mhm.
golfers in it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she
And he makes that joke, and he's like, "What are you talking about?"
he looks so like dumbfounded. And she's like, "It's
Yeah.
raining outside." He's like, "Okay, like what do I
Yeah.
care about that?" But it goes to show like he's like kind of like expressing his inner child too. Like they get to play with each other, which again is not really shown in movies nowadays when it comes to erotica or like sexual thrillers. They leave out that really pivotal part in BDSM culture where it's about having fun. It's not about like, oh, you punished, I'm gonna punish you. Like, no,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
about that, Like it's about letting your inner child out to play and being, satiated through whether it be exploration or through discipline like Lee or something, simple or not even like extreme. So I do appreciate how they showed that in the movie.
Mhm.
So I think we need more of that in movies nowadays. People tend to like, you know, side eye stuff like this because there's not a lot of like scenes depicting this kind of like playfulness, which is very fun. It's very relatable and it's not that intimidating.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. It was like if you there are more movies nowadays, like, allow that playfulness between 2 characters, like, people wouldn't look at it and be like, "Oh, I could never, like, see myself in that," or like, "Oh, this is what it is, so I'm gonna stay as far away from that as possible," and it's like, "No." So, yeah, I feel like, yeah, we need more movies like that, and I feel like just with some films and TV shows that we've been seeing recently, I think we can expect to see more of that shift, hopefully, in portraying realistic dynamics and relationships. So we'll see if somebody takes on something of this nature in the near future.
Like that's another thing too, where it's like people kind of associate, BDSM culture being like latex, leather, and like
Yeah.
all the extremes, which there's not a problem with that at all, but it's like more to it than that. It's not about the
Mhm.
actual like pieces themselves being super like harsh. It's about what they make you feel. Like the sensuality of it all is what really matters. And with these characters, you kind of see them not take that for granted. Like they very much appreciate that part of their relationship dynamic where they get to trust each other and make themselves feel safe in that office area.
Yeah, like, it's exhilarating and, like, there's arousal and trust. So I like that that's what we're kind of playing with there too. But yeah, because there's not much to the costume design, not too much about the designer either in terms of, like, interviews regarding this film. We thought we'd give you guys some history on BDSM. So strap in.
You want to take the reins?
So basically what BDSM stands for is bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadism, and masochism. And I thought it was interesting that this dates back to like medieval times. Like this isn't something that, we associate with, like, I feel like, I don't know, you think about BDSM, for me, for some reason, I think about the 80s. I don't know why,
Like the
but that's
leather
just where
daddies.
my brain, like, travels to. Um, but no, this actually goes back to, like, I think ancient Greece is what I found. Um, but there's still, like, no really proper documentation about it then. Um, so basically, it's kind of just been all over the place in terms of, like, people, studying it or coming up with their theories about it. But basically, the Marquis de Sade, hopefully I'm saying that right, he was a French aristocrat from the 18th century. And basically, the term sadism was derived from him.
Yep.
And he very much pioneered the philosophical and sexual writings, blending eroticism with violence, which, you know, sadism. And then in the 19th century, we have Richard von Krafft-Ebing, who coined the terms sadism and masochism in his 1886 novel Psychopathia Sexualis, which focuses on male homosexuality and bisexuality, which is also considered one of the earliest works um, exploring that. And then we have Sigmund Freud, who went on to later connect the two terms sadism and masochism, which we can thank Freud for a lot of things. Um, but basically, what I found was, and even like, watching the film, there's a lot of misconceptions about BDSM and it being really like strictly associated with the act of sex, which, like I said again, I expected more sex in the film thanks to like films like 50 Shades of Grey and um, what other, there are other films, but I think that's the most recent one that comes to my mind in terms of like associating that with sex itself. And it was really interesting because going back to like that feminist idea of like how can you be submissive to a man, right? There was actually a study in the Netherlands back in 2013 that found that about 76% of women preferred to be in the submissive role, while 8% actually preferred to be the dominant role, leaving 16% preferring to be the switch, which is them basically taking on both the dominant and submissive role, but like, switching. So I thought it was really interesting, women, 76% of women saying that they preferred that. But the reason, the conclusion to that was basically that women experience more pleasure from the submissive role. In that same study, uh, when it comes to men, 33% preferred to be the submissive, while 48% preferred to be the dominant. And I thought it was really interesting that the percentage of men wanting to be submissive was that high. I would expect it to be a little bit lower, but obviously the conclusion of that was that men get more pleasure from being dominant, obviously. But yeah, it's really interesting. I think I found this from the National Institution of Health or something. I think is where I found this information from. Um, Basically, again, it's just the psychology behind what makes somebody want to enter into this type of relationship. Some people have found that it provides stress relief, obviously, because when you're in a certain power play or engaging in that, your cortisol levels are lower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because obviously, like your body's experiencing something very different. So, some have found that like that's stress relief because your body's like trying to figure out how it's trying to feel about other things. Um, and then, yeah, some practitioners of sadism, masochism report that pain itself is not what's arousing or rewarding for them, but rather the idea of the pain and the threat of it that can be the main source of pleasure, which that made me think of Lee with like, self harm or like even just him being like punishing her in the sense whenever she makes like a mistake. Um, so yeah, that's what I found. But I know that you did a little bit more deep dive into the landmarks of BDSM in cinema.
It's my time to shine. Most of these I have seen, and one of them is my favorite, which is also starring Jane Spader. So, some landmarks in kickiness in cinema includes Ecstasy from 1933, starring Heidi Lamar, which was really big back then because she was that girl. So, this is like the first mainstream motion picture that really depicts intercourse, but it's the first to kind of like dramatize, if you will, or like focus on a woman's happy ending. Okay.
Mm.
This is really big because these two acts are often played out behind the scenes or like fade to black kind of like
Yeah.
transitions, you know? But really, the director, Gustav, decided to go a different route with this. And instead, he focused on the actors' enraptured faces to really mark the true beginning of the cinema's love affair with sex, essentially. So, this is where it all kind of began over here, at least in the Western world. And then we have Belle du Jour, which is a movie lots of cinephiles are very familiar with. It's basically erotic filmmaking, really focusing on sexploitation. And they basically took the reins in this era. So think Russ Meyer, like that type of vibe. So director Louis Buñuel was the driving force behind the 20th century cinematic kink, according to Vulture, with this film. So we have him to thank for that over here. This also stars Catherine Deneuve, again, really big name, so really big deal. But nothing really explicit takes place on screen besides fantasies of domination and other acts, if you will. And there's like a buzzing box that's like featured towards like the end. It's given to her by a customer, quote unquote, whose contents are never revealed, so we don't know what's in the box. And it's like kind
Mm.
of like a symbol of deviance and desire that's still very prevalent and important to this day. And the most recent and most notable one on this list that I have, and my fave, is Crash from 1996. Do not get it twisted with the 2004 one, okay?
Dang.
Listen, if you've seen the movie, you know, okay? This was directed by the king of freaks, David Cronenberg. So he basically took this idea, which is very controversial, even more controversial than this movie, where he tests the waters with what makes people drawn to each other. Let's just put that there. Kind of like trauma bonded. There's two versions of this movie. There's NC-17 and then there's the rated R version. So it both depicts a group of individuals that are tied by a very interesting infatuation with car crashes. Okay. You're looking at me like, okay, where's this going? So
No king shaming.
um, so they're kind of like trauma bonded through car crashes. So James gets into a car crash in the beginning of the movie, and he shows up in the hospital. Obviously, his leg's broken, his arm's in a sling, and there's this girl there who looks like a nurse, right? But she's not a nurse. She's actually a fetishist, essentially. Like she scopes out car accident victims in this hospital. So then she could kind of like initiate them into this world of car crash fetish type thing, okay? And her friend is like super into car crashes to the point where like he rebuilt the car James Dean died in. And his dream
God.
is to crash this car and to essentially die in this, remake of the car. And there's like other people into this too, like not just these people. It's like a whole community of people who are into car crashes. And then he gets into it. And then he kind of like he kind of initiates his girlfriend into this world too. So at the end of the film, they get into a car crash, but they don't die. And like the last line is like, oh, we'll get it next time. So this movie is based off of a book, which I did not know about till like a few years ago. But that was also very controversial too, because again, when we think of car crashes, oh, it's trauma, it's bodily
Yeah.
harm. Just like this movie too, it's bodily harm, but they kind of like it's interesting because like they kind of like reclaim that trauma and they kind
Mm.
of like compartmentalize it into something more, and then that's kind of tied to their desire. So they get this like adrenaline rush from surviving these car crashes, and if they, let's say, they break an arm there or something, like there's like a lady that has like leg braces, they make it look sexual, like it
Mm.
looks so enticing because it's the thrill of it, it's the idea of like, oh, I can like survive this thing with this person. So what else could we do? Like it's that kind of like bump that they really like strive towards. And the ultimate high is dying from a car crash. So you're like
That's an interesting idea.
this,
Disclaimer, do not do this at home.
don't do this, okay? I didn't tell you to do this. Don't experiment with it. But it is one of my favorite movies of all time because of how interesting it is. So it's in my letterbox top 4 if you guys are interested. Essentially what I'm trying to get at is like the common denominator of all these movies is that like it pushes these taboos and these
Mhm.
norms by displaying deviance as a natural reaction rather than a choice, which is like kind of like a common misconception, you know?
Mm.
And really, like, the act itself isn't the central focus of all these like controversial movies. It's about the act being used as a metaphor or a tool within the narrative, and it strengthens character development and the story as a whole. And it kind of challenges you, the viewer, to like think, what do you consider desirable and why? And this is important in the history of cinema. Not it explores what it means to be human. It's important for every art medium to really push this like meaning of like what it means to be human and how can we like represent this on the screen. So if you're like, oh, this is too much for me, I get it. Like it's not everybody's cup of tea, but if you're into like stuff like this, I highly recommend these movies. Another really prevalent one is Solo, which I did not want to get into that because it is like one of like the most extreme in exploitation cinema. But yeah, these are like the movies that really push that drive and really has challenged, Hollywood and like what their conception is of, beauty, desire, what it means to be wanted and stuff like that. So that's my little nerdy spiel about
Mhm.
Crash. But what do you think?
I mean, yeah, I think in terms of like, what all these films address and how they've pushed Hollywood to like the limit, which is, really telling nowadays. I think people are afraid to push those limits. I think we need more of that, obviously. And especially like among our generation, there's a lot of discourse of like relationships, even just like hookup culture now, how we perceive that. We're Gen Z, by the way, if you couldn't tell. Um, I think yeah, I think we need more of those films or just even our generation paying attention to those films and going back and watching them and again having a conversation of like, what is desire? What is it to be desired? What is it to desire something? Um, and it's a natural, like you said, it's a natural reaction. It's not like a choice. So I feel like you would help us like understand a lot more things nowadays versus like media and just art that doesn't really do anything to question that. It just sort of conforms to what Hollywood thinks we want to see and what we want to hear. And it's like, no, you need to start pushing those boundaries again because that's what starts conversations, not conforming to the conversation.
And the act of sex itself is political. That's the thing too.
Yes.
So like Hollywood needs to get with that program when it comes to politics. Everything is political, big and
Hmm.
small, including the act of sex, because it also really like, it relates to queerness, which is also very big in Crash. These
Hmm.
people aren't defined by a box. Their desire isn't like labeled, So really like testing like what it means to like these certain things or to think differently, and how could we advocate for people who don't fit in this box, and how could we like make it less judgmental, obviously without like it being harmful to anybody. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's important now more than ever with like Gen Z, I want to say like late millennials too, like kind of like being so paranoid with being
Hmm.
perceived, which,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? And you have to be kind of cringe in order to love somebody. That's just kind of how it is nowadays and how it always has been. So these films are objectively like, again, if you look at it through like a really like narrow-minded like mindset, is kind of cringy. Not gonna lie. I've heard people say like, "Oh, Secretary's cringe" or "Crash is cringe" or whatever. Still, the best things in life are cringe, and it's okay to be kind of corny because that's what makes people people. You have to like risk that judgment in order to like be your authentic self.
Yeah, and I mean, even now that we're talking about this film, I think going back to that political, we're seeing a lot of push on women. Even just like the idea of going to like this marriage boot camp,
Mhm.
where they're trying to have single people go. I'm like, no. Like, I think that's even now, like, you talking about this film and a woman's sexual freedom and um, bodily autonomy, which again is we're seeing a lot of pushback on that. Even with just like a court case, I believe right now that's being heard. It's scary. And again, hopefully, like we've been seeing shows like Heated Rivalry. What was another one that recently, like a film that recently came out? That's just again pushing that boundary on the type of relationships that we're seeing represented, how we're seeing the act of sex being represented. And, it'd be really interesting if, like, after these 4 years or even this decade alone is up, we see a film where, again, it's addressing a woman's sexual freedom and what it means to push those boundaries like we were talking about. Anything else we want to touch on with this film or
I thought it was so iconic that she was wearing a wedding dress at the end while testing everybody's patience
yeah.
that was visiting her.
Yeah. At one point during that scene, I was like, girl, it's not that serious. But I guess, again, to show him, like, I'm committed to this, um, I was like, okay, girl, go off. But yeah, I was like, it's not that serious. It's never that serious. But it is, I guess.
And like that's what I was like kind of like that too, low key. When I first watched it, I was like, "Girl, stand up, go use the
Like,
toilet."
go to the bathroom.
But then I was
It's
like,
not like he's there. He, like, left her there.
"Right, he's chilling at his house." So I'm like,
Yeah. So how was I gonna know you got up?
he got cameras everywhere. Probably knowing him, he would have
Yeah.
cameras all over the place. But I love that like sequence just because like one, it shows like how judgmental or where we get that judgment from with like different,
Mhm.
areas in life, whether it be religion, your peers, scholars, all these like powerful institutions that uphold these patriarchal values and misogynistic ideologies. And
Mhm.
they're just visiting Lee, kind of like the ghost of Christmas past, just like
Yeah.
person after person, down to like her brother-in-law, who I'm like, who are you to be judging her? First off, when you married her sister, who was so mean to her. So like,
Yeah.
I don't care what you have to say. But I also told you this before. Um, that's Oz Perkins, which
Mhm.
for all the horror movie fans, director of Long Legs and son of Anthony Perkins from Psycho. Also found out his great grandma is Elsa Scaparelli. So the correlation with horror and like fashion is one big circle. I'm telling
Yep.
you, it's a lot closer than you think. So I
Yep.
thought it was kind of funny that he popped up and I was like, long legs? What are you doing here? But yeah, I love how like she wore that dress and then like at the very end, they're both wearing like pretty neutral colors. Like they kind of found that equilibrium that they needed and
Mhm.
they respected the balance and they found what they wanted. And then at the very end, she's wearing, I think, the same dress for their wedding, right? Like the same exact one.
No, I don't think well, I don't even think they showed their wedding. I think it was just
Her against the tree.
yeah, and she's wearing purple.
There you have it. She reclaimed the color. It's her color. Again, it goes to show that, like, she's like, why can't we play all the time? And he's like, kind of right there, Like, why can't we?
Mhm.
So it's nice to know that, like, they found that balance, which a lot of people struggle to find nowadays.
Yep. Do we even know what we're talking about next week? I don't even
The Bride.
Okay, good, because I know there's something that we've been wanting to tackle, which at this point I feel like we're just gonna wait until Christmas time to do it.
Well,
'Cause
because I figured, like, okay, since one, the reason why I brought this up to Valerie is not to bother her, but also, like, I've been getting, like, the edits on TikTok and stuff for Secretary, and I'm like, oh, this is great because nobody has ever like broken down the wardrobe for this movie besides
Yeah,
me.
which also like really interesting too in our research. I was like, nobody has really ever like talked about the costume design for this film. Like not even like just like articles or anything, let alone like obviously like the designer talking about the movie, but like nobody has talked about it.
And it's like so weird because nowadays, or like at least the last few years, I've been seeing a lot of like Lee cosplays. So I'm like,
Interesting.
why don't people talk about it? And all my friends know. I mean, besides us, but like we all know the movie, and like it's kind of like
Mhm.
iconic in the cinephile world and in
Yeah.
the fashion world, kind of, especially on Twitter. You will see at least one secretary edit every day. But besides that, The Bride is directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal and stars her brother. So that's the second correlation. The third one being we're gonna cover Love Story, everybody's fave show, everybody's
At the
mother
moment.
at the moment until Heated Rivalry comes back.
And we should specify Love Story, the John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette show, because I think he's gonna make this into an anthology series similar to like Monsters, where he's gonna tackle like several American love stories.
Ooh,
I've already seen people like pitching, like, oh my gosh, you have to do Elizabeth Taylor and what's his name? Richard.
not Richard Gere.
No, no, no. Oh, what's his name? One sec. Elizabeth Taylor. Richard Burton, who are like have an iconic love story of their own. I've seen people talk about David Bowie and his wife Iman,
That's the
which
one I
I
want to see.
which I want to see. Because I don't know too much about them. So I was like, I feel like that'd be really good. A lot of people have been saying Stevie Nicks and Lindsay from
No,
Fleetwood Mac.
no.
I'm like, you're gonna. I'm sure that's a lawsuit coming for you, pal.
Literally, it's a lawsuit and a hex coming
If
to you.
the Kennedys aren't coming after you, they will.
And if you're like, what does this have to do with Secretary? So basically, I found a photo of James with John John, which I was like,
Mm.
I couldn't believe that they knew each other. So I told you, and I was like, oh my god, this is a sign that this would be a perfect segue into these two projects, which are pretty, recent too. So it's very serendipitous.
And John John is a nickname for JFK Jr., for those who didn't know.
Right. I'm like, this is not a rando.
Yeah, we're gonna cover some other things as we get closer to summer and more stuff coming out.
So stay tuned for that. And until next time, stay safe, stay kinky,
Yeah.
and we'll catch you guys later.
Be freaky.